You've convinced yourself there's a ceiling, a point you can't push past, a level you're not capable of reaching, and you've lived beneath that ceiling for so long that you've forgotten it was never real. It was never concrete. It was never physics. It was never biology. It was belief. And belief, unlike bone, can be broken. Let's talk about how. Most people think limits are discovered. They try something once, fail, and decide, that's as far as I can go. But limits aren't discovered. They're installed, piece by piece, year by year, failure by failure. Someone told you that you weren't smart enough. You believed them. That became a limit. You tried something and failed. You stopped trying. That became a limit. You looked around and saw people better than you. You decided you'd never catch up. That became a limit. And now you're walking through life inside a cage you built with your own thoughts. The bars aren't steel, they're assumptions. And assumptions can be questioned. Here's what most people don't understand. Your body doesn't know your limit. Your brain does. Your muscles don't quit because they've reached maximum capacity. They quit because your brain sends a signal that says, this is enough. And that signal is based on past experience, not potential. Your brain is designed to protect you, to keep you safe, to keep you comfortable. So when you push into discomfort, it panics. It tells you to stop. It convinces you that you've hit a wall, but you haven't hit a wall. You've hit a warning. And most people mistake warnings for walls. They feel discomfort and think, I can't. When the truth is, I haven't yet. That gap between I can't and I haven't yet, that's where your real capacity lives. Most people never find it because they stop at the first signal of resistance. They try once, feel the discomfort, and retreat. And every time they retreat, the limit gets stronger. It becomes proof, evidence, a story they tell themselves. See, I tried. It didn't work. This is just who I am. But it's not who you are. It's who you've been conditioned to be. And conditioning can be reversed. Let me tell you about someone I knew. He was an engineer, 38 years old, worked at the same company for 12 years, good at his job, comfortable, safe. But he had this idea, a product he'd been thinking about for years, something he knew could work. Every time he thought about building it, the same voice would show up. You're not an entrepreneur. You don't know how to run a business. You'll fail. So he stayed where he was, inside the limit he'd accepted. One day his company restructured, his department was eliminated, he was let go. And suddenly the limit that felt like safety became a trap. He had no backup plan, no side income, no proof that he could do anything other than what he'd been doing. For the first time in his life, he had to ask himself a real question. What am I actually capable of? Not what he'd been told. Not what he'd assumed, what was actually true. So he started small. He didn't quit his job search. He didn't bet everything on the idea. He just started testing, built a prototype, reached out to 10 potential customers, asked if they'd use it. 7 said yes. That small piece of evidence changed something inside him. It wasn't proof that he'd succeed, but it was proof that the limit he'd been living under wasn't real. He kept going, found a contract job to pay bills, worked on the product at night, talked to more people, refined the design, built a better version. 6 months later, he had 20 paying customers. A year later, he quit the contract work. The product was covering his expenses. 2 years later, he had a team of 4 and revenue in 6 figures. But here's what matters. The breakthrough wasn't the business. It was the moment he realized the limit was a lie. He'd spent 12 years believing he wasn't capable of building something from nothing, and it only took one small test to prove that belief wrong. The limit wasn't in his ability. It was in his willingness to challenge what he'd accepted as true. And once he challenged it, everything changed. There's a moment that changes everything. It's the moment you stop asking for permission. Permission to try, permission to fail, permission to believe you're capable of more. Most people wait for confidence. They think, when I feel ready, I'll start. But confidence doesn't come first. Action does. You act, you survive it. Then confidence shows up. You don't feel capable before you do the thing. You feel capable after you've done it enough times to prove it to yourself. That's the shift, from waiting to feel ready, to making yourself ready by doing it anyway. And here's the truth nobody tells you. The first time you push past a limit, it's terrifying. The second time, it's uncomfortable. The 10th time, it's normal. Your brain recalibrates. What used to trigger panic now registers as challenge. What used to feel impossible now feels difficult. What used to feel difficult now feels manageable, but only if you keep going. Most people stop at terrifying. They feel the fear and think, this isn't for me. But fear isn't a stop sign. It's a signal that you're at the edge of your current capacity. And the edge is exactly where growth happens. Not in comfort, not in certainty, in the space between what you've done and what you're capable of. That space is where limits break. Most people never break their limits because comfort feels like safety. They confuse the absence of pain with the presence of progress. They think, if I'm not struggling, I must be doing fine. But fine is the enemy of exceptional. Fine is where potential goes to die. Because growth requires discomfort. And discomfort is exactly what most people spend their entire lives avoiding. They choose the familiar job over the challenging opportunity. They choose the easy conversation over the honest one. They choose the predictable outcome over the uncertain possibility. And every time they choose comfort, they reinforce the limit. They teach their brain, when things get hard, we stop. And the brain learns. It gets better at stopping, better at finding reasons to quit, better at protecting you from discomfort, until eventually you can't push yourself anymore, because you've trained yourself not to. The other reason people never break their limits is they wait for proof before they commit. They want to know it will work before they try, but there is no proof. Not at the beginning. Proof comes after the discomfort, after the failures, after the moments where you had no idea what you were doing and did it anyway. Most people never get there because they need certainty before they start. But certainty is earned, not given. You earn it by showing up when you don't feel ready, by continuing when you don't see progress, by trusting the process even when the outcome is unclear. And eventually the evidence stacks up, and the limit that felt permanent becomes laughable. You look back and think, I really believed I couldn't do this. But you did, because you never tested it, and untested limits always feel real. Listen to me. The limits you're living under right now are not real. They feel real. They've been with you so long that you've built your entire life around them. But they're not walls, they're beliefs. And beliefs change the moment you challenge them. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to move forward with the fear. You don't need to know how it's going to end. You just need to take the first step. You don't need permission, you need commitment. Commitment to testing what you've assumed. Commitment to questioning what you've accepted. Commitment to becoming someone who doesn't stop at discomfort. Because here's the truth. You are capable of far more than you've allowed yourself to believe. Not someday, not when you're ready. Right now, the version of you that you're trying to become already exists, not in the future, in your potential. And potential doesn't activate on its own. It activates when you push past the point where you used to quit. Every time you used to stop, and this time you keep going. That's when the limit breaks. Every time you used to doubt, and this time you trust yourself. That's when capacity expands. Every time you used to retreat, and this time you lean in. That's when you become someone new. Not louder, not more aggressive, just more willing. Willing to be uncomfortable, willing to be uncertain, willing to prove to yourself that the ceiling you've been staring at was never solid. It was fog. And fog disappears the moment you walk through it. Your limits are not permanent. They never were. They were built quietly over years through repetition and fear and old beliefs that were never questioned. And they can be dismantled the same way. Not with one heroic effort, but with consistent, deliberate decisions to push past the point where you used to stop. You don't need to become a different person. You just need to stop protecting the version of yourself that's too afraid to try. Because on the other side of that fear is a version of you that's capable, confident, clear, A version that doesn't ask for permission, doesn't wait for proof, doesn't stop at discomfort. A version that knows limits are temporary and breaks them quietly, consistently, without fanfare. That version is already inside you. You don't need to find it. You need to build it. One decision at a time. Starting now. This is Unstoppable Mind.